Barcelona, Spain, the venue of an international tribunal designed to mobilize world opinion on the European Union's obligations under international law towards the Palestinians. The Russell Tribunal on Palestine is a three-day event which takes the form of a court hearing. Prominent politicians, academics and eyewitnesses are called to give testimony on Israel's treatment of the Palestinians and the EU's response to it. The jury will deliver their verdict on Wednesday.
These tribunals are tremendously important and prestigious. Now, this has been convened in order to talk about the repression against Palestinians that Israel is practicing all the time. And it is a very welcome development in what I hope is a non-violent but effective war against the violations of the Israeli state of international law and international norm.
Tribunal delegates argue that the Israelis are denying the Palestinians the right of self-determination by waging war on civilians, occupying their land and blockading them economically. And they said prominent European countries, such as Britain and France, are allowing the Israelis to do this by giving them diplomatic and military support.
That Gaza has been cut off from the world now for nearly 2 3/4 years. People can't leave. Patients who need medical care that's unavailable in Gaza can't get out, or if they do, they're subject to lengthy procedures at Erez. We know for a fact that at least 26 people have died because of that, because they haven't been able to get out. It's a mind-blowing thing that it's been allowed to happen. It's a straightforward violation of international law. There's no real ambiguity. It violates numerous principles of both human rights law and humanitarian law.
We should establish a criminal court to try those who violate the rights of Palestinians. We must pressure international institutions to respect their rights, and there can be no impunity for those who fail to do this.
The Russell Tribunal on Palestine isn't a legal court with the power to make Israel or the European Union comply with its rulings. But it feels that the struggle of self-determination of the Palestinian people, just like the struggles of the South African peoples and the Vietnamese peoples before them, will only achieve success if world opinion is mobilized effectively around the Palestinian cause. Roshan Mohammed Saleh, PRESSTV, Barcelona, Spain. Day 2 of the Russell Tribunal on Palestine in the northern Spanish city of Barcelona. In the morning session, delegates denounced European military and economic support for Israel. They revealed that Romania, France and Germany are the biggest arms exporters to Israel. And they call for the European Union-Israel trade agreement, which gives Israel preferential trading terms, to be torn up. Experts have told the tribunal that the European Union's own rules prohibit it from selling arms to human rights violators like Israel. But they say that European politicians are simply ignoring the European Union's own rules. Lawyers also told the tribunal that international law obliges courts to pursue Israeli leaders responsible for war crimes in Gaza, as well as prosecuting those who support Israel militarily and economically. And an ex-British government minister called for a worldwide campaign against what she called the apartheid Israeli state.
And it's quite clear that Israel is constantly seeking to expand its borders, wants the land without the people, and is confining the Palestinian people to a series of cruel enclaves that are worse than the Bantustans in South Africa, and imposing collective punishments in a way that breaches all principles.
Meanwhile, one of the co-authors of the United Nations Goldstone report, which accused Israel of war crimes in Gaza, called for a ban on the deadly white phosphorus weapon that Israel used to deadly effect there. He also admitted that the weapons were supplied by the United States.
White phosphorus is a highly toxic, volatile chemical that should never be used in wartime as an obscurant. It was withdrawn from my army in the 1970s. Simple as that. We withdrew it quite simply because we didn't want to imperil wild animals that roamed across our artillery ranges. Contrast that value with the value that dropped 400,000 wedges over the city of Gaza in a matter of several days.
The tribunal's jury will now retire to consider its verdict. It will consider if the European Union is impeding the Palestinian right of self-determination and how the EU should change its policies towards Israel and the Palestinians. Roshan Mohammed Saleh, PRESSTV, Barcelona. The verdict was damning. The Russell Tribunal on Palestine found that Israel had broken international law by committing grave human rights violations against the Palestinians. And it found that the European Union was complicit in Israeli crimes by failing to take action against Israel and by giving it military, diplomatic and economic support.
Closure of the borders of Gaza Strip and restriction on the freedom of movements of its inhabitants. Prevention of the return of Palestinian refugees to their home or land of origin. Given the discriminatory nature of these measures, since they are based inter alia on the nationality of the persons to whom they are applied, the RTP finds that they present features comparable to apartheid.
The jury found Israel guilty of subjugating the Palestinian people through military attacks and the occupation of their land, by refusing millions of Palestinian refugees the right to return to their homes, and by collectively punishing them through the economic blockade of Gaza. But they also reserved their ire for the European Union.
The EU and its member states are therefore under an obligation to react in application of international law to prevent violations of peremptory norms of international law. By failing to take appropriate action to that end, the EU and its member states are breaching an elementary obligation of due diligence pertaining to respect for the most fundamental rules of international law.
The tribunal is now calling on the EU to tear up its trade agreement with Israel and to stop supplying Tel Aviv with weapons. And it's urging EU member states to arrest Israeli war crime suspects if they step foot in their countries. The Russell Tribunal on Palestine's rulings are not binding, and many of its members fully expect European politicians to simply ignore its findings. But in the event that happens, they're calling on ordinary European citizens to put pressure on their elected representatives to do the right thing. Roshan Mohammed Saleh, Press TV, Barcelona, Spain.